In every corner of this world, there are truths that ordinary eyes cannot see. Stories whispered in empty corridors, waiting for someone who can truly hear them. This is one of those stories. In an ordinary place, in a school like any other, an 8-year-old girl named Emma Johnson was an enigma. While the other children ran and screamed during recess, Emma talked. She would stop beneath the old tree in the courtyard, tilting her head to the side, as if listening for an answer that came not from the wind, but from something or someone else. To the teachers, it was distraction. To the classmates, it was oddity. To the eyes that only see the concrete, it was pure imagination. An imagination, some said with regret, dangerously vivid. They labeled that difference. They called it isolation. They called it madness. But what no one could even imagine is that what they called madness was in fact the rarest and most extraordinary of gifts, a gift that few souls throughout the history of humanity have been chosen to bear. Because Emma Johnson wasn't alone. She never was. While the world saw an empty courtyard, Emma saw presences of light. Where others saw shadows, she saw wings. She was the child who saw angels where no one else could. And that's just the beginning. Because the real question isn't whether Emma saw the invisible, but why these messengers revealed themselves to her. What did they want? And what happens when the world tries to silence a voice that hears the secrets of heaven? Emma's story is about to be revealed, and nothing will be as we imagined. Imagine a quiet street in an ordinary neighborhood where life follows its peaceful rhythm. Now, close your eyes for a moment and try to visualize the purest scene of innocence. A cozy little house with lace curtains and flower pots in the window. It was there, in that peaceful corner, that Emma Johnson lived. A tiny 8-year-old girl with a head of golden curls that seemed to defy gravity and blue eyes so deep they reflected the summer sky, a sky that, you'll discover, she saw in a way no one else could. Within that home, love was the fuel. Emma's mother, Sarah, was a woman of quiet strength. She worked late as a seamstress, and her hands, callous from needles and thread, were the same hands that caressed her daughter's forehead before bed, telling stories of distant kingdoms. She did everything to give her little one the best, and Sarah's greatest treasure was that simple morning ritual, seeing Emma wake up with a smile on her face, as if each new day were the most exciting adventure of all. The routine was a ballet of innocence. Emma packed her pink backpack with meticulous care, combed her unruly curls, and walked briskly to the neighborhood elementary school, her dress swirling slightly with each step. Anyone who saw her would agree. She was the essence of sweetness, a kind child who offered flowers to neighbors and helped her classmates. But if you stopped long enough to look into her eyes, really look, you noticed something that sent a chill down your spine and, at the same time, an immense curiosity. There was an ancient depth in her gaze, a serene wisdom that simply didn't belong in an 8-year-old. It was as if she were guarding the oldest secret in the universe, and that's where the mystery began to unravel. Ever since she could speak, Emma had a habit of talking to herself, or at least that's what everyone thought. She would whisper things quietly in her room, giggle into space, and most intriguingly, extend her hand into the air, palm up, as if about to take someone's hand for an invisible ride. "Who are you talking to, my love?" Sarah asked, with a tenderness that only a mother possesses as she prepared dinner. Emma turned to her without a hint of hesitation, her blue eyes shining with an inner light. "With the light friends, Mommy. They dance in the sunlight that streams through the window and whisper songs only I can hear. They are so beautiful and they always protect me." Sarah smiled, a tender and slightly rueful smile, attributing it all to her fertile childhood imagination. After all, what child doesn't have an imaginary friend? What Sarah couldn't yet understand, and what we're about to witness, is that Emma's imagination wasn't an escape from reality. It was an expanded perception of her own. Her daughter didn't invent companions. She saw them. She possessed a rare and forgotten gift, a key to a parallel world of beauty and mystery. the ability to see the divine messengers who walk among us, whispering truths and spreading their protective wings over those still pure enough in heart to perceive them. And it is precisely this purity that will be put to the test, because school, a place that should celebrate curiosity, is about to become the stage for a colossal misunderstanding. The whispers will grow louder, the shadows will lengthen, and the question hanging in the air is no longer, who is Emma talking to, but rather what happens when the world tries to force a child to deny what their own eyes see. The most extraordinary journey is just beginning. In the next part, we'll enter the halls of that school and discover Emma's first great challenge. Get ready, because the line between imagination and miracle is about to be erased forever. Don't miss the next chapter. The truth will surprise you. Imagine carrying a secret so beautiful that it overflows your soul, but every time you try to share it, the whole world looks at you as if you're broken. This was the reality for Emma Johnson, an 8-year-old girl whose greatest gift was about to become her greatest cross. The first day of 3rd grade should be about new beginnings, blank notebooks full of possibilities, and the sweet scent of fresh crayons. But for Emma, it would be the day the chasm between her world and ours would open irreversibly. The teacher, Mrs. Williams, was the embodiment of a world that had forgotten how to dream, a rigid woman whose walls were built of rulebooks and whose heart beat to the metronomic rhythm of what could be seen, measured, and touched. She believed in mathematics, grammar, and order. She could never have imagined that morning, her classroom would be invaded by the extraordinary. In the middle of the first lesson, on state capitals, a small, timid hand rose. It was Emma, her blue eyes not filled with doubt, but with calm certainty. "Teacher," said the girl's soft voice, which echoed in the silence of the room, "the gentleman over there in the corner is saying that you have a very kind heart." What followed was one of the heaviest silences a child can experience. The entire room turned in unison to the empty corner Emma had indicated. Chairs creaked. Some students frowned in confusion. There was absolutely no one there except a stack of books and a faded world map. "Emma, stop playing these silly games." "There's no one there," Mrs. Williams snapped, her voice thick with impatience that was already trying to drown out a thread of unease. But Emma, innocent and anchored in her truth, insisted, her eyes shining with the sight only she could witness. "But he is Professor. He has such a beautiful golden light around him, and he is smiling at us. He says the man you were taking care of, the man with the mustache, is fine and sends his regards." The girl couldn't have known that Mrs. Williams had lost her father, a man with a distinctive mustache, a few years earlier. The specific mention was like a bolt of lightning on a clear day. The teacher's face strained of color. The shock, however, quickly turned to fear, the fear of what one doesn't understand. And fear, as always, dresses in the garb of anger and rejection. "Enough, Emma. This isn't funny," she screamed, slamming the ruler on the table. That was the trigger. Her classmates, who had been in suspense until then, began to laugh. Whispers, sharp as knives, spread through the benches. "Crazy. Emma is crazy. She sees people who don't exist." At that moment, an invisible label, yet heavier than any backpack, was stuck to Emma's back. The weird girl label. And from that day on, Emma's school life became a lonely ordeal. With each class, she couldn't contain the wonder that inhabited her world. She mentioned the friends of light she saw around the school. She saw a guardian angel, a figure of pure serenity, beside each child, especially those who were bullied in silence, as if a heavenly presence were comforting them in their most vulnerable moments. She described spiritual messengers walking through the hallways, not with the solemnity of ancient paintings, but with a contagious joy, bringing a sense of peace that she could smell like a perfume in the air. But nobody believed it. Nobody wanted to believe it. The other children, driven by the cruel instinct to reject those who were different, began to avoid her as if she carried an invisible disease. The nicknames multiplied. Ghost Emma, Weird Girl, Crazy Angel. During recess, the height of childhood loneliness, she would sit alone on the swing, chatting quietly with her invisible companions, while the sound of others playing formed a wall of exclusion around her. The situation reached an inevitable breaking point when the school administration decided to call Sarah in for an urgent meeting. The principal's office, with its diplomas on the walls, was a tribunal of normalcy. "Mrs. Johnson, we are deeply concerned about Emma," the principal began, her voice soft and unable to disguise the gravity of her words. "She has constant episodes, hallucinations. She talks to people who don't exist. This is disrupting classes and isolating her from the other children. Perhaps she needs to seek specialized psychological help." Sarah's heart shattered into a million fragments. How could she explain, in that room full of adult logic, that her daughter wasn't sick, but blessed? How could she make those serious faces understand that Emma's sensitivity was a direct line to the sublime, not a flaw to be corrected? She left feeling the crushing weight of a world that wanted to medicate magic. At home, Emma's despair boiled over. Hugging her mother, hot tears streamed down her face, staining the pink dress she loved so much. "Mommy, why can't anyone see my friends?" she sobbed, her voice a mix of pain and profound incomprehension. "Why does everyone think I'm lying? They're real. Mommy, I swear. They tell me such beautiful things about God, about the love that exists in each person. They say Mrs. Williams cries alone at home, but that an angel watches over her too. Why won't anyone listen?" The pressure mounted like a black tide. Teachers whispered and changed their course when they saw Emma approaching. Parents of other students, alarmed by their children's distorted accounts, called the school demanding that their children stay away from the disturbed girl. The principal, unsure how to handle it, finally suggested that perhaps the best course of action would be to transfer Emma to a special school, a painful euphemism for a place where her difference could be contained. The isolation was almost total. The light in Emma's eyes began to dim, overshadowed by the doubt the world insisted on planting in her heart. She began to question herself. Was it all just her imagination? Was she broken? And it was precisely in the darkest moment, when the last door seemed to be closing, that the incident occurred that would change everything forever. An event so impossible, so publicly witnessed, that no one, not the strict Mrs. Williams, not the cruelest classmates, not the most skeptical parents, could ignore or explain it. What began as an imminent tragedy in the schoolyard, an accident that could have stained the place with pain, would become the greatest testament to Emma's gift. What happened on that cold autumn afternoon? What did Emma see that no one else could, and that miraculously saved a life? The truth, always in plain sight but invisible to the naked eye, was about to be revealed in a way that would bring the entire town to its knees. The final revelation is coming. In the next part, you won't believe what Emma's eyes witnessed and how a simple, invisible act of faith became irrefutable proof that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our vain philosophy. The story is about to take a turn that will touch your heart and make you question everything you thought you knew about reality. Don't miss the conclusion of this extraordinary journey. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunderous trumpets or blinding lights. They whisper. They hide in the darkest corners, dressed in the garb of what the world, in its haste, calls madness. What if I told you that the greatest of these whispers saved a life on a simple, gray Friday in October? This isn't just a story, it's an invitation to question everything you believe to be real. Prepare your hearts, because we're about to delve into the moment when the invisible became the only anchor for a boy on the brink of the abyss. The day was heavy with that unique scent of impending rain and wet earth. The playground at Willow Creek Elementary School had been moved to the gymnasium, an echoing, stuffy place where the children's noise mingled with the muffled sound of water lapping against the high windows, while most ran and screamed, oblivious to the storm brewing both outside and within a lonely soul. Emma Johnson stood quietly in a corner, her blue eyes, now often clouded by a premature sadness, didn't see the basketball or the jump ropes. They saw what they always saw, a silent dance of lights and shapes no one else noticed. And that day, one of those lights was in despair. While everyone was distracted, Tommy, a 9-year-old boy with hunched shoulders and a long vanished smile, had escaped from the gym. The pain of daily bullying had become an unbearable burden. Unnoticed, he climbed the silent stairs to the second floor, a deserted place during recess. His small, trembling hands gripped the cold windowsill of the hallway as he stared down at the empty, soggy courtyard. Tears mingled with the rainwater dripping down the glass. For Tommy, this seemed like the only escape from a pain he could no longer bear. But Emma saw more than that. She understood. Her eyes didn't lock on the boy. She couldn't even physically see him from where she stood. Instead, she saw Tommy's guardian angel, a figure of light that normally emanated a calm serenity, now gesturing frantically and anguishedly to anyone within sight. The light around him, usually golden, pulsed with hues of red and orange, a silent alarm only she could perceive. The angel pointed desperately toward the stairs, his face a mask of terrible urgency. It was then that a whisper, clear as a bell, echoed only in Emma's mind. "He wants to fly away from the pain." "Help!" A chill ran down the girl's spine. Without a second thought, she turned to the teacher on duty, Mrs. Clark, who was chatting absently with another staff member. "Tommy's angel is crying for help." Emma's voice, usually a whisper, cut through the noise of the gym like a scream. Her small body was tense, her eyes wide with real terror. Mrs. Clark sighed, rolling her eyes. "Emma, please stop this. We've already discussed these inventions." The teacher's expression was one of disgust, not concern. To her, it was just another chapter in the girl's disturbed imagination. But Emma didn't back down. The vision in her mind was too real, too urgent. "He's at the window, up there. The angel is saying he wants to fly. Please believe me." Her voice was filled with such genuine, raw desperation that for a second it made one or two children stop playing. No one moved. The looks she received were of irritation and embarrassment. "Crazy," someone whispered in the background. Emma's credibility had been so eroded that her life or death warning was treated as an inconvenience. And that was when the courage of an 8-year-old overcame the blindness of every adult in the room. Emma realized she could count on no one. If Tommy was in danger, she would be his only hope. Without another word, she turned and ran toward the gymnasium door, her small feet echoing in the empty hallway. She took the stairs two at a time, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to burst from her chest. She wasn't just running, she was following an invisible beacon, the urgent directions of the angel only she could see, guiding her like a thread of light straight to the boy. Reaching the second floor, panting, the scene unfolding before her was the materialization of her worst nightmare. There stood Tommy, one foot already propped up in the window, his scrawny body swaying dangerously against the gray sky. The wind howled, bringing raindrops that wet his tear-soaked face. "Tommy, no!" Emma's scream wasn't one of panic, but a firm command, carried with an authority that wasn't hers. The boy turned, startled by the voice. His eyes were red, swollen, and filled with heartbreaking pain. "Nobody loves me, Emma." Her voice was a thread, almost carried by the wind. "Everyone laughs at me. I'd better go." Emma approached slowly, her voice incredibly calm, as if repeating words she heard from a very deep place. "That's not true, Tommy. Look there." She pointed to the empty space beside him, but her eyes saw a majestic presence. "Your angel is here. He's crying because you're hurting so much. He tells you that you are deeply loved, that your life has a beautiful purpose, that God has wonderful plans for you. Plans that include you staying here." She continued speaking, revealing intimate details she could never know, little secrets Tommy held close to his heart, dreams he was afraid to tell anyone, things the angel beside him whispered in his ear. The anger and despair on Tommy's face began to give way to profound astonishment. How could she know? How could she describe the angel his late grandmother always said protected him? In that moment of eternal suspension, as if a higher power enveloped them both in a bubble of peace, Tommy's resistance broke. His body, previously tense for the leap, slackened. He recoiled from the window, collapsing onto the cold hallway floor in a fit of tears that were now no longer of despair, but of relief. Emma rushed to him, and they embraced, two small souls against the world, united by a heavenly secret. And as they wept together, Emma glanced over Tommy's shoulder. The guardian angel, now enveloped in a serene golden light, was no longer panicked. He looked at Emma, and for the first time, she saw a smile not just of gratitude, but of recognition. A smile that said, "Thank you for listening, but what then?" What happened when the teacher, alarmed by Emma's disappearance, went upstairs and found the two of them embraced on the floor, the window dangerously open? How did the school, which had so rejected her, react to the fact that the crazy girl had just prevented a tragedy based on information she couldn't possibly have? Emma's life was about to change again, but this time, the whole world would be forced to wake up. Revelation is coming. In the next part, you'll witness the impact of this miraculous event, how parents, teachers, and even the local press reacted when the truth came out. Was this enough for them to make peace with the unknown? The story is about to take an even more surprising turn. Don't miss the thrilling conclusion of this chapter that proves that sometimes the greatest reality is the one we can't see. The silence on the second floor was heavy, broken only by the muffled sound of rain against the windows and Tommy's convulsive sobs as he found refuge on Emma's shoulder. It was into this almost sacred scene that the teacher, Mrs. Clark, finally arrived, panting, alarmed by the girl's disappearance. What her eyes registered, however, was not a playful scene or another of Emma's fantasies. It was the crystal-clear image of a discrete miracle. Two children united by pain and a comfort that came from an unseen source. Tommy, through tears and trembling sighs, didn't hesitate. Looking at the teacher with heartbreaking sincerity, he told her everything, every word, how Emma had appeared like a guardian angel at the very moment he needed her most, how she had repeated secrets he held deep within his soul, things no one could possibly know. The news spread through the school not as a rumor, but as a silent earthquake. For the first time, people didn't look at Emma with disdain or pity, but with respect mixed with the deepest bewilderment. Someone was finally paying attention to the content of her visions, not just their strangeness. She wasn't a girl who saw things, she was a girl who, through these visions, channeled messages of love, protection, and a tangible hope that had just saved a life. The incident forced even the most skeptical to pause and reconsider everything they thought they knew. It was in this atmosphere of restrained reverence that the principal, Mrs. Patterson, a woman of management and protocol, decided to act. But this time, it wasn't to call a disciplinary meeting. It was with an open, if skeptical, heart that she called Emma for a private conversation in her office. The room, once a place of reprimands, became a sanctuary for one of the most extraordinary conversations those walls had ever witnessed. "Sit here, dear," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice softer than usual. She offered the girl a juice and leaned forward, her serious eyes fixed on Emma's. "Tell me, Emma, tell me about these angels you see. What are they like?" Emma, whose innocence was her purest language, needed no preparation. Her blue eyes lit up, and a small smile appeared on her lips, as if she were finally being invited to describe her best friend. "They are made of light," she began, her voice melodious. "But it's not a light that hurts the eyes. It's a soft, warm light, like a hug we feel in our soul. Each person has a guardian angel who stays close by, sometimes placing a hand on our shoulder when we're sad." The director listened, trying to keep a neutral expression. And mine, Emma? Do you see my angel?" Emma looked to a spot just behind the principal, and her expression softened even further. "Yes. Your angel is a very wise lady. She always has a large, open book in her hands, filled with brilliant letters. It's because she loves teaching, spreading knowledge. It's her mission, and yours. Mrs. Patterson felt a shiver run down her spine. Ever since she could remember, her greatest pleasure had been being surrounded by books. Her childhood dream was to have a library, and she carried a book in her purse every day, like a talisman, a piece of information Emma could never have guessed. "And what do they say, Emma? What's the message?" the headmistress asked, her voice now a little weaker, her rigid posture sagging. Emma looked directly at her, and in that moment, she was no longer an 8-year-old, but something much older and wiser. "They say we are all children of God, and that He loves us equally. That hardships, pain, all are lessons for our souls to grow and become stronger. And the most important lesson of all," she paused, as if listening, "is that we must love one another, even when people are hard to love, especially when they are hard." At that moment, a fragment of memory, long dormant, surfaced in Mrs. Patterson's mind. A passage from a book her grandmother had read to her about a doctrine that spoke of benevolent spirits. The words echoed in her mind like a distant bell. "Pure spirits are God's messengers, for they carry out His will. It is a holy mission they perform." She had read it decades ago and had never remembered it again. Until now. And then Emma finished, with a serenity that was astonishing for her age. "My angel told me I came here to help people remember. To remember that we are never, ever alone. That there is a greater love, even in our saddest and darkest moments. They never abandon us." Something broke inside Mrs. Patterson. It wasn't a breakdown, but a quiet transformation. All her certainties based on rules, spreadsheets, and concrete evidence seemed small and insufficient in the face of the simple, profound truth emanating from that child. She wasn't faced with a hallucination. She was faced with a gift. And she, like so many others, had been too quick to judge, to label, to try to fit the inexplicable into a convenient box. But would this transformation in the principle be enough to change Emma's fate at school? What happened when the full story, with Tommy's account and the remarkable conversation with Mrs. Patterson, reached the other parents and the community? Would acceptance be universal, or would new, perhaps even greater, challenges loom on the horizon? Now, Emma's journey is about to transcend the walls of her school. In the next installment, you'll discover how a simple article in the local newspaper would trigger a chain of events that would place the girl and her family at the center of a whirlwind of national attention. Prepare for a thrilling journey that will explore the impact of becoming a beacon of hope in a world thirsting for miracles. Emma's true mission is just beginning, and her revelations promise to shake the foundations of what we thought possible. Don't miss the next chapter. From that fateful day on, a new breath of understanding swept through the school's corridors. The principal, Mrs. Patterson, a transformed woman, organized a solemn meeting with the entire faculty. It wasn't a meeting to impose rules, but to ask for a fresh perspective. "Look," she pleaded, not with the eyes of judgment, but with the eyes of the heart. "There are more in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our vain philosophy." And so, they began to see. The teachers, now attentive, witnessed small, everyday miracles. Emma seemed to possess a radar for the human soul. She would approach a classmate who was trying to hide his tears with a crooked smile and whisper something in his ear. And invariably, a visible peace would come over the child. She had a supernatural intuition for detecting silent pain, offering exactly the words of comfort the heart needed to hear, as if guided by an infinite source of wisdom and love. Tommy, in turn, became her best friend and most ardent protector. He never tired of telling her, his eyes shining, how Emma had saved not only his body from falling, but his soul from despair. Her loyalty was a shield against any trace of prejudice. Little by little, a pure, organic movement took over the playground. Children who had previously avoided her now sought her out when they felt alone, scared about a test, or sad about a fight at home. Emma never let them down. Her simple yet profound advice brought a comfort that surpassed childish logic. At home, Sarah could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The weight of doubt and worry dissolved, giving way to an overflowing pride. She understood that her daughter was not a broken child, but rather an ancient soul born with a rare and beautiful gift. Childlike mediumship in its purest, most crystalline form, not yet contaminated by the veils of the material world. She remembered the words that had always comforted her, now with renewed meaning. Blessed are those who have their eyes closed to the things of this world and open to the things of the spiritual world. Emma grew up knowing she was different, but this difference, once a mark of exclusion, became her greatest blessing. She learned that her gift was not to be hidden in fear or shame, but to be cultivated with love, humility, and a deep sense of responsibility. Years later, that girl with golden curls and eyes that saw the invisible became one of the most respected mediums in her region. Her home is not a sumptuous temple, but a place of peace where she welcomes, especially, children and parents lost in the midst of experiences they do not understand. Today, at 28, Emma Johnson dedicates her life to helping families understand and nurture their children's spiritual gifts. In her lectures, always with a serene smile, she repeats the most important lesson of her life: angels never abandon us. They are there, in every corner, whispering words of love and guiding us with their wings of light. We only need the inner eyes to see and the heart quiet enough to hear. The girl once called crazy has become living, breathing, and inspiring proof that the heavens are not in some distant place. They are here now, closer than we ever imagined, whispering through those who, like Emma, remain courageously open to the mystery.